I would like to present the panel of today that will deal with the topic promoting female entrepreneurship in Africa. And on my right-hand side, for you left-hand side, we have the winner of the King Baudouin Foundation Africa Prize. So yesterday we had quite an emotional event in the palace with some 200 people. It was quite moving to hear your story. And we would like you to give a few minutes after I've introduced the other speakers to also give the same type of story, the story of her initiative, your organization that has won this year this prestigious Africa Prize. Just for those people who do not know the King Baudouin Africa Prize, the King Baudouin Foundation awards innovative initiatives in Africa, mainly youth-driven, fully African-driven, people who are really confronting the many challenges that Africa at this moment has to confront. And if you know that for every European born these days, there's 12 young Africans born, it means that there is quite some challenges for this young generation in terms of employment, jobs, all types of other reasons to fully back and fully support initiatives such as the one of her initiative. So we will give in a few more minutes the floor to Lydia, but first I would like to present the other panelists. And on my left-hand side, we are very lucky that we have another winner of this prestigious King Baudouin Foundation Africa Prize, Bilikis Adebeyi Abiola from Nigeria, who is also the chair at this moment of the selection committee. And Bilikis has established already quite some time ago a very interesting organization in Lagos, the biggest city in Africa, We Cyclers, a recycling company, and she will be able to tell you all about it. So that's also very important for our audience to get to know what you have been doing and how you are operating and what lessons we can learn from each other's experiences. And then on my far left side, the right side for you here in this meeting room, we have Georgia Brooks. And Georgia Brooks is a real advocate of women's rights, gender equality. She has taken a lot of initiatives, not only here at the level of Brussels, but also at the level of the Middle East. You were yourself living for quite some time in Egypt. And it's very interesting to also have that perspective in the discussion today, so that we have perspectives from West Africa, Bilikis, perspectives from East Africa, Lydia and Georgia, who can also bring in Middle Eastern perspectives, also very interesting. And then last but not least, we also have a man in this panel, apart from myself. And that's also very good to know that we have with Bart Kazir, a representative of Enable, but someone who also has been working in Tanzania for more than 10 years and who is very much aware of how startups and how promising initiatives can be backed up, can be supported. So he will also reflect on his experiences and probably also bring in some answers on the questions that will be put to him by some of the panelists and some people here in the audience. So with this, I would like to give the floor to Lydia Charles Moyo, the winner of the prize this year, and asking, of course, Lydia, how did you really come to establishing her initiative? What have been your major challenges? What is the key achievements? What have been the key achievements so far for her initiatives? And how do you see the future of her initiative? So please, the floor is yours. Take the other micro.
It's on.
It's working.
Yes, good afternoon. So thank you for having me in this panel, and thank you for starting with me. So as Git introduced me, my name is Lydia Charles Moyo. I am the founder and executive director for the Her Initiative organization based in Tanzania, which is also the laureate of KBF Africa Prize 2023-2024. Could you please clap for me? yeah, it wasn't so easy. So yeah. So our initiative is a nonprofit organization, particularly a young women nonprofit organization that works to contribute breaking the cycle of poverty and create financial resilience among girls and young women in Tanzania, but we leverage technology as a tool to achieve the mission. So before I tell you about all that we do, let's just take you back of how we started. So our initiative is inspired by my personal story, although now it's not a personal story anymore. It's a story of a team. If you were at the palace yesterday, I'm sure you met the team of our initiative, but the inspiration was from my personal story. And I grew up raised by only my mom, was working at the government, but a very low position. So she could not afford most of the things, like taking us to private schools, giving us like the best, like a parent would want for their children. So I went to public schools. In primary school, I went to a school called Kimara Baruti, a public school, which I used to walk to school and come back home, but it wasn't so far, maybe like 15 minutes, 20 minutes walk. But then when I passed, I was selected to join a public ward school. So a ward school is worse than a public school. Yeah, so by that time, a country just initiating new schools, but I think as a country, we're not prepared in terms of the quality of education to provide. So I was selected to this school called Kingongo, which is like an hour walking to school. So I used to walk an hour to school and come back. I remember the first day I got to school, I felt like I was better than anyone else. I seemed better because some did not have shoes, it was just so bad. So when I looked around, we didn't have laboratories, we didn't have library, we didn't have teachers. We were even started using classes of primary school because they were still building classes for secondary school. So I took on that opportunity, and I think we were many, but there was a lot of dropouts, teen pregnancy, teen marriages, but most importantly, poverty. Just people were just tired. Girls were tired, bored, were tired because you walk, and then it's not like the school is very inspiring. So we had a huge dropout. By the time we were finishing secondary school, we were like 200 of us, but only 9 of us made it to high school. And out of 9, only 3 were girls. So I left behind more than 3/4 of my peers. And when I joined high school, I had this really heavy burden inside of me because I don't think I was the smartest. For me, it was like the environment was not conducive for us to thrive. Like you go to school, but it was created in a way that we we're all gonna fail. So I started thinking, what can we do so that we have more girls passing, even if they are in difficult environments like mine? So some of the things that I realized was confidence, that to just keep on pursuing your education regardless of the challenges, but also learning how to navigate these challenges. So I spoke to a few of my friends at high school. One day we were wearing our uniforms because we were in town and then we walked. So most of our white shirts were a bit cream. We were dusty. And then we went to this organization in Tanzania. It's called Tanzania Women Lawyers. And when we got there, we knocked, and then this guy received us, and we told him, we want you to teach us girls' rights and girls' laws, and we're going to teach our peers. And then he looked at us and was like, okay. And then he said yes. So he taught us. And then when we understood, we started campaigns in school. So we did campaigns on 5 schools, which reached over 1,000 girls in secondary schools. So the idea was actually campaigning on how to boost self-esteem, self-confidence to girls, and also bring different mentors, different successful women to share how did they navigate around challenges and why they're successful. So what we did, because we did not have money, we just like spoke to the girls, and they say, maybe I want to see Miss Tanzania, I want to see this musician, I want to see this lawyer. So what we did, we just called them and tell them, we are girls, we're doing this, can you come? But we don't have money. And they used to come. I don't know why, but they used to come. So they were pretty successful. And for us, we kept on seeing like girls having this agency, being more confident about who they are, what they want to do in life. And it was very fulfilling. I'll miss those moments because they were really like genuine and really, you are a girl and you've done something and you see it's working. You don't have money, but you see, okay, it's working. And then after that, I was lucky to be selected to join the University of Dar es Salaam, which is one among the biggest universities in Tanzania. So when I joined, it was really hard because we didn't have money. And when you're at university, as a girl, you have, even after university, as a girl, a woman, you have more expenses compared to your income. The expenses list is always like increasing. And then I used to see most of my peers looking for unhealthy ways of getting money. So I sat down again and say, how do we get money? So I brought a few of my new friends again, and I told them, how about we start entrepreneurship events at school? We teach girls about entrepreneurship, and and they can start small businesses, but at the same time we get money. So then, we started events called Panda. Panda, the word is a Swahili word which means planting. So the idea of the event was planting a seed of financial independence to college girls. So then we started, we did in University of Dar es Salaam, and then we did even in another region, Mwanza, university called Sauti. So the idea was to actually bring successful entrepreneurs, successful women, men to come and share their journey, having like an exhibition where women, young women, college girls could show different, creativity they're doing. They were really, really fun. To be honest, at that point, it was just around having, and we were lucky to have the most popular and significant people in Tanzania, the owners of media, the owners of companies, businesses. So they were quite powerful. And at the end of the day, we attracted a couple of sponsors. So that's how we got money. So at the end of the day, we got paid. Yeah, so I did that whilst in school. And then after that, I got an opportunity. I got a job at which I worked for 2 years and a half. Then I had quit my job. These days I tell people, quit your job with your plan, because I suffered. I suffered. Yeah, you have to prepare. So I found myself selling my car, using all my income. I was in really pretty bad shape. And then I had quit my job. 2 years, it got worse, and we didn't have even money for transport, money for meals. And then one day, I think it was July 2021, I just sat with the team and I tell them, like, go home. We're done. We can't do this. And everyone was like, but this is a good idea. We have done this for 2 years, but it's not working. There's no money. Nobody's willing to fund us. They just call us to events. They just call us to speak. They publish on social media, but they're not giving us money. So the moment that I wanted to quit, a sister of mine told me, why don't you write about it? Like, I write about it. She was like, yeah, you can write how you feel. I was like, do you really want me to write how I feel? She's like, yes, I'll take a look once you're done. So I started writing, and then I wrote all my frustration. And then I wrote this letter, which I titled it, to development partners, put your money where your words are. It was such an angry letter. I tell you, if I write that one now, I will not even get funded.
You become a little bit afraid now. Right?
Yeah. It was an angry letter, but a very genuine letter that shares a frustration as a young leader who's trying to do something for the community, not being supported. And I understood that was not only my reality, but a reality of so many youth, so many young women and men, and I was just saying to development partners, put your money where your words are, meaning stay true to what you're saying. We see generational equality. We see Agenda 2020. We even see national plans that want to support young people, but nobody's putting money on young people. And for me, it was like, we are done ticking the boxes. We don't want to be called to events and be given transport. We don't want to be writing proposal with you and you get the money, and us, when you get the money, you just give us transport. We have to use it as an umbrella. We also want to hold you accountable. I mean, there's no transparency and accountability in what you're saying. If you're saying you're working with young people and women, can we ask you how much of your money is really going to young people and women? There's no place we can see that. So I was calling out for accountability and transparency, but also saying we are done. If you're saying we're young people, you appreciate us, and then you wait until we are old for you to give us money. by the time I get maybe 50, my ideas will be completely different. I won't even be able to connect with the younger generation. So if we want to invest in the younger generation, the time is actually now. This is the time. So the idea was put resources, but you know, these all due diligence processes that always rule us out before you even apply for that money. You don't have you don't have document, you don't have policies, you don't have audited reports for 3 years. Audited reports needs money. How are you going to audit when I don't have money? So for me, it was like, meet young people where they are. It means if you want us to put all those systems, they are not rocket science. You can teach us, we can learn, we can put policies, we can put functions, we can put systems, and you can give us the money. But I understand most of the funders do not want to take that risks. So at the end, most of the good ideas of young women, young girls go down the drain because they don't get enough resourcing. So I wrote that letter and it ended so well, apparently. So it started a discussion. Most young people could relate to it, but a couple of funders reached out and say, what's the ideal way for you to support young people? And then I was like, okay, I think training is good. Mentorship is good, but for now we are overtrained and mentored. We are overtrained, but there's no money to actually implement, you know, what you're training us, all those ideas. So I believe in training and mentorship, but can you complement that with resourcing? Even a little bit, for us to put all those systems you're saying. Because at the end of the day, if you come and go look what young people are doing, maybe in my country, you would see they're supporting, they have initiatives, they have projects, but they use money on their own pocket. They're selling their own things. So then I was able to actually to start up, get a little fund to start a way where I trained my peer organization. For now, we have like 40 organizations. We have trained them about institutional strengthening, about organizational development. And then at the end of the day, we give them seed grants to put up systems. And I remember one of our first winner who got maybe $2,000. After 3 months, 4 months, she got $100,000. And she told me, if these people came before your program, they would not give me money because I didn't have all the board charter minutes. I didn't have all these systems. But after your program, they found me funding ready. So that's how it started. So just going to what we are doing, I can talk, but I'm finalizing.
Few more minutes because
few more minutes.
we need to give the floor to the rest of the panel.
So what we do as our initiative is actually seeing most of the problems that are facing women and girls are centered around poverty. So what we want to do is to actually giving or supporting young women and girls to have financial muscles, be financially free, so that they do not make choices out of vulnerability. They're not left behind in decision-making tables, but also they're able to like live and realize their full potential. How we do it? First, we have our model, which has got 4 components. The first component is around mindset transformation, which is we are empowering a girl with information related to economic opportunities, but also we are teaching them a rights-based education, which means is actually teaching girls about their rights and standing up for them. We have seen women who are economically well, but still experience gender-based violence. So what we do is amplifying the agency inside young women and girls so that they're able to stand up for themselves. Then after that, we have a second component, which is skills development. At skills development, we're actually enrolling girls to different skills that are related to income generation activities and could be in different sectors, could be agriculture, could be interior designing, but also on value addition. If you don't really want to create something, you could catch in the value addition chain, like marketing, you could be around packaging and branding. So what we want to actually create is create a generation of young women that are skilled. You know, this notion sometimes comes, oh, women are not competent. No, we want a generation of young women that are competent and are ready for the market. The third thing is resourcing, which is like what I was talking about. The resource to actually complement these skills, to actually complement their enterprises, their businesses, and etc. And the fourth one is enabling environment. By that, we mean we cannot do anything if we do not have policies, we don't have laws that are protecting women and girls. So that's our model. And we have reached over 15,000 young women and girls. And we hope with the support of KBF in the next 5 years, we will be able to reach more than 100,000 young women and girls. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I think it's good that you also mentioned that fourth point, the enabling environment, because you talked a lot also about resources and the donors that should put their mouth where their words are. And that's definitely an element that we will discuss also with Bart later on. But the enabling environment to make sure that your type of organization can survive and that it can really work in a proper manner is definitely also an important element. I guess that Tanzania has gone through, at a certain moment, quite difficult times in that respect. But we can come back to that later on. Yes, do you recognize parts of that story when you are thinking about the genesis of recyclers?
Yeah, absolutely. Lydia's story is one that I think just grabbed the imagination of everyone, on the jury. And, especially as a very young person, it's really challenging. And also as a woman, I started recyclers right out of business school. So I was living in the US. I went to MIT Sloan and started to go back to Nigeria. I had lived in the US for about 13 years before that time. And I wanted to do something that would, give back to where I was from. And it was crazy. There was really nothing that looked like recyclers. The idea was, how do you get people in low-income communities to clean up their communities while empowering themselves? And there was no model that was really like that. So we had to build something from scratch. We literally had to build a cargo bicycle. We had to build our software solution from scratch. We had to go to the communities full of people that were very skeptical about what we're doing. And I'm sure we looked like we were crazy. And, as a young woman, it really was tough, was challenging. But I had support. I had support of MIT. They gave us money to start recyclers. I had support of my family. I was also from a very fortunate background, so that also gave me support. And just looking at hearing Lydia's story, I can just imagine how tough it was for you to build her initiative from nothing. I remember a couple of years after starting recyclers, I took some people around the one of our places, and it was two men. And one of them, after I had given them the tour, he was like, "You must be a very stubborn woman." And that's really what you have to be to make a change.
Yes, Georgia, your reaction as well to the story that Lydia was telling us, and also please complement with your own experiences.
Yes, thank you. So in addition to having founded the 9 here in Brussels in 2021, I had even before that a fund at KBF called FemPower Initiative, which funds health and education projects for girls and young women in the Middle East. So my own background is I'm half Egyptian. I also wanted to give back to a society that I recognized I had a huge amount of privilege being born and brought up in the West compared to my friends and family in Egypt. And that was a choice that my parents made, but still nonetheless, I did want to go back. And interestingly, when I was setting up FemPower at the very beginning and doing the tours of different projects that we could fund or work with, actually being half Egyptian didn't help because everyone thought I was a spy. So at the end, I just had to kind of go full tilt in my English identity, which is very obvious, as you can see. And yes, determinedly stubborn too. I have seen things you people would not believe, to quote Blade Runner, but I think probably actually Bilikis and Lydia, and I'm sure Bart too would attest to this. We are talking health clinics with no running water. We are talking slums of Cairo with an estimated 11 million people, but no one really knows because they're completely undocumented. You have buildings that are just left empty and people will inhabit them. They will set up shops, they will set up a clinic, they will set up whatever it is they need to set up. And they came back to Belgium with, I think it's a population of 10 million. And I was like, oh, wow, okay, we have a few hospitals. So in comparison, it's not doing so badly. But my thoughts on everything that's been said, I'll also bring in the 9 here because female entrepreneurship, even in the West, even here in Belgium, where we have an excellent amount of healthcare, social care structures, is difficult. In fact, I would argue it's the culture and the enthusiasm is less than what I saw in Egypt. A lot of people are always very surprised when I see this, but we have a level of comfort here and perhaps a level of apathy towards innovation because we live in very comfortable situations. So we're not looking necessarily for the new, for the different, for the better. When I went back to Egypt, and certainly when I met with young women who wanted to start businesses, it was very small. It was, you know, catering at home. It was hairdressing at home, all in the home, of course, because heavens forbid that we go outside into the world of men. But they were doing it, and they had such determination and such need. I found that so inspiring. And then here, just to give you some facts, with the Bold Women Female Entrepreneurship Barometer, only 7% of female entrepreneurs in Belgium describe it as a positive experience. And I think that is so telling that actually we are not given support. We are not given funding. We all know the statistics, 1% of VC funding goes to female founders. And they are not given encouragement. So actually, I think there is a lot that we in Europe can and should learn from Africa.
Very interesting. Maybe that's a question that we can put also to each of you and think about it. What are the main reasons why this younger generation in Africa is so dynamic and is so entrepreneurial, is so much willing to embrace digital economy aspects and all these types of things? Because that is a bit what you just said. So we should continue on this point later on, but I would like to give a reaction first, or to ask Bart to give us a first reaction, and also to expand a little bit on that element that was so clearly spelled out by Lydia. If you want to be innovative in Africa, if you have bright ideas, if you really want to start with a business and you have entrepreneurial ideas, how difficult it is sometimes to convince a donor, how difficult it is for a donor also to take the risks to invest in organizations that are just starting up. What is your feeling on this? Because you have been working in Tanzania with various types of organizations.
Indeed. It's on. Okay. Yeah, a lot what has been said here resonates a lot with me. First and for all, I'm not an entrepreneur. I didn't start up anything. I worked for an organization and I've been thinking and implementing projects. My wife is one though. She had an interior design business in Tanzania. We're together with a Tanzanian partner. So I know what the business environment means. She was also during Magufuli time. It's a very difficult time. Now she's also being an entrepreneur in Belgium. And I know an entrepreneur, and I'm coming to the story. An entrepreneur has to go to what they call, in finance, the valley of death. So this is really when the graph goes down and you're burning cash and nothing is coming in. And that's a bit what you're explaining, and that you walk through the desert, so to speak. And the same goes for organizations. Of course, you need to show, or even job interviews, you have to show that you have experience, that you have expertise. But you know you can do something, you feel you have something in you, but you cannot really convince another one because you need these documents. And then, yeah, making the link to the question, Enable, for example, it's a public development agency. So we have, I've worked for different organizations, from very small NGO to a bit bigger NGO, and now a development agency. And it doesn't get better as you go if you step the ladder. We have something called procurement rules. So which already basically, the rules out maybe 90% or 99%, or even if you're very well structured. So, but I don't want to focus or zoom in too much on the negative. For example, to enable, now I will say something about my director. He's Jean Valwetter. He's a very, somebody who has a vision about the future. And when he sees something good, it's also something that he likes to support. And I think within Enable, we are looking how can we become more flexible? How can we be more opportunistic, but in a good way? we are still thinking a little bit too much in a program logic. So we go to a certain area, then we develop a program, which we do very inclusive. We get everybody on board, local government, local organizations. But sometimes you have a business, a very interesting business or organization that's just outside that circle or that square. And then and they need means. And, you know, if you put even a little bit of funds there, it will have a great impact on your work, and we cannot do this. So that's something we would like to change by having more flexible funds where we can take a little bit more risk on board. Yeah, we don't only work in East Africa, but also in fragile states. Belgian government is still active in Burkina Faso, Niger, Mali. So you know what's the situation there. There we are talking about Wagner groups with a very difficult way to work. So there you cannot work through the normal development agency work. So you have to work through local structures and work with. So I don't have the answers yet, and I think we still have a discussion. But yeah, your observation is right. The answers are not yet there. But the openness is definitely there to think. Also, I heard you when yesterday you mentioned, I'm into access to finance. That's my role in Enable. When you mentioned about the investment funds, that's something really, impact funds that are with local managers and national managers. I think it's very powerful. I was in Senegal and I visited there the Women Investment Club. I don't know if you know about them, but it's amazing. They are 97 women. They can go only to 100 because of the business environment, then you become an investment company. So that's, but it's interesting. They're 97, they are still looking for 2 more, not 3, otherwise they get into another. So they started as a saving and credit, like a Vicoba. So village saving and credit organization. But they became bigger and bigger and bigger, and now they are at 13 million euros. And they want to now attract investment from, for example, the Belgian Investment Organization, and they even want to make it a franchise with have different chapters in other countries in West Africa. So these are kind of movements that are happening in Africa that I found extremely interesting, really bottom-up structures, and which I think we as development agency should support.
You think that in the world of the development agencies, as you call them, that there is space to give types of core funding to organizations like the ones that we are having here in this panel? Or is this at this moment a bridge too far?
I know this is happening now already in the philanthropic world. So people are changing their way to work. So in the beginning, you have to do very large reports and very hard. So they start to change. It's not yet happening in the development because of the public procurement rules. We still have to follow the same rules as we do in Belgium when we start working with an organization or a company. So we have to bring organizations in competition, but that doesn't mean that we do a lot of core funding. So it's not only project funding. So if we work with an organization, there's always an aspect that can go into organization development, hiring of staff. So we have that organization building, and I think for an organization, or could we say a movement, like her initiative, I think that should be really something that could interest Enable. Yeah.
Maybe on the context in which we are living these days, we see an increasing number of mushrooming initiatives in Africa, in other parts of the world, but at the same time, the traditional donor communities are under big pressure to shift their resources to other types of budgets, including defense. Today we have a summit in Brussels. We had Zelensky yesterday here in Brussels. It all points into the direction that European member states will provide much more funding to defense and definitely less to development. How can you combine this with the story that we are just having here around this table, it's not really a big table, but with all these emerging initiatives that are so promising and that probably are looking for resources, is there something maybe to be done also at the level of African initiators? I'm thinking here of, in your country, someone like Tony Elumelu and others.
So I think just to take a step back, I don't think African women really need small grants, because there's so many. I think every African woman is an entrepreneur, honestly, because you have a job on the side, you're selling something, so that is not a problem. The problem is, how do we scale these businesses up where they are not, like charity businesses and they're actual businesses, like looking at recyclers, we had an idea that was different, and the donor organizations that were supposed to support, they didn't understand it. So they took years to write reports to understand what we're doing. And during that time, we had to struggle to raise funding. Would go to companies that were, making these products that we're collecting from the communities and figure out how to get them on board. So we're very fortunate that we had a way out. But there's so many women that don't have a way out. There's so many women that don't have that option. And I think as Europe, don't look at it as philanthropic money that you're giving to people that are begging for money. No, look at it as partnership, because you are actually going to benefit. Because at the end of the day, if you help create big businesses, you'll make money. You'll invest in companies that are big in Africa, and you'll make money. And for instance, I know a lot about the waste sector. It's a virgin sector. Imagine investing in a company that becomes huge in Africa, that's collecting waste and building all these things, and you're an investor in this kind of company, you're going to make your money. So at the end of the day, I don't think we should look at it as just giving out money. Let's look at it as investment, as partnership on the same wavelength. It's not a big brother to a little sister situation. It is a partnership at the same level. We are all equals. How do we make the world move forward together as partners?
Georgia, maybe you also want to complement this story from your own experience.
Well, I would say absolutely, 100%. And I do think we are at an age in the world now where we are reframing, where language is reframing our concepts and ideas as it rightly should. And I love what you're saying here. Let's not call it philanthropy. Let's call it partnership. Let's call it investment. And in Europe too, I mean, female founders need investment. That's full stop. Lydia, your story resonates so much with me too, because I have so many people who come to the 9 and they want to have an event, or they want to have a photo shoot, or they want to be there because so-and-so was there. And yeah, this costs. And they're like, oh, but I can't pay. So we're just perpetuating this idea that women's initiatives, that female businesses run on a different currency, i.e. no currency. And that has to stop. How would you ever think about doing this in a male-dominated business world or a male-founded business? You probably wouldn't. So let's take away this idea that everyone's doing us a favor. No, it's not a favor. This is a business. I have staff. You have teams. Like, we need to live. And we live by money. We don't live on a couple of social media posts.
Brings me maybe to another question to Lydia. Financial entrepreneurship, financial independence entrepreneurship, that's one major component, of course, of the work of her initiative, but there's a second component, which is very much related to sexual reproductive health rights, fight against gender-based violence. That's sometimes a more tricky type of issue in certain political contexts in Africa. How are you dealing with this, and how have you been dealing with this? You really have had quite some experiences.
Yeah, so I think one thing that I've learned, and maybe you would agree with me, is that when you're dealing with women, you cannot deal with one thing, because most of the issues are really interconnected to each other. So you can't say you're empowering women economically to set up a business and then not even think about gender-based violence, because once they are physically tortured or emotionally tortured, they're not in a position to actually engage in production, or they will not be productive. So at the end of the day, you might even find someone having a business, but they're still experiencing gender-based violence, you know. So for us, it's been like economic empowerment is complementing other social issues that are facing women and girls. It also accelerating better sexual reproductive health and rights outcomes. So we, in the beginning, we were also just thinking about money and thinking, oh, when we have money, you just give the women money, they have businesses and you're done. No, they can go back home and they can be told you're not going to do your business tomorrow again. You'll stay at home. So you need this woman first to know who she is, to know her rights, and to stand up against that. Because you cannot go to her home and say, she has to continue with her business. She has to stand against that. So here comes more around what I explained, for them to know their rights, you know, empowering their agency, because they already have it. I usually say we don't give women agency. We don't have it. They have it inside of them. So what we do is we amplify what is already inside of them. But also with our work, we've seen, for instance, we work with adolescent girls and young women, and Tanzania now has each year 40% of new infections, HIV infections, is adolescent girls and young women, 60% divided to the remaining group. So you can see how that is an issue now, because that group is a vulnerable group and there's a potential, like a potential workforce, and it's possible for them to replicate it to other groups. So now you have to think about that as you're empowering them economically, because you have to think about how do you reduce the ability to catch new infections? You know, how do you reduce, how do you use economic empowerment to reduce the pain and the frustration of poverty that leads them to engage in unhealthy relationships or relationship with elderly men? So you could see there's a connection between money and HIV. So it's the same. There's a connection between money and gender-based violence. You're being abused, but you cannot even get out of a relationship or get out of a home because you don't know how you're going to feed yourself. You don't know where you're going to live. So at the end of the day, you stay there because you want to accommodate yourself. So that's how we've been thinking. And to say you cannot leave behind issues of sexual reproductive health and rights, especially reproductive rights, because as women, when you have a family, when you have kids, there's so many things that comes along with it. So these things are more likely interconnected to each other. And that's why we say the financial power, economic power, cannot just be used for increasing your economy, can also be used to advocate or to accelerate better social outcomes.
An interesting approach. You combine these two objectives, but you also had at a certain moment quite some difficulties in your own country with some of the measures taken by the previous president. I remember particularly pregnant young kids who were not allowed anymore to remain in school and who had to leave school. How have you been dealing with these complex situations? Because we discussed the enabling environment. It's so essential. What do you do in these types of contexts?
Well, at the end of the day, you cannot just say you leave your country and you say, oh, you, the government, you're not doing your job, so leave your jobs. We do it for you, you know. So what has been for us at that point, we had to look for alternative because pregnant girls could not go to school. So they were home. They became more vulnerable. They were experiencing more GBV. They didn't have an idea of what they could actually do to continue building their dreams. So for instance, that time we thought of a project called Plan B, meaning Plan A has failed. And we worked with adolescent girls that are school dropouts, either for pregnancy, for other reasons. And what we did now, we had to like help them, teach them about entrepreneurship, where they could start new businesses, where they could start new innovations. And at the same time, we gave them education on reproductive rights because most of them go through a lot of violence in the homes they're staying, in the streets, because people, once you're not in school, they take you like an adult and they forget that these are kids. So there's a lot of things happening, and because they're kids, they're scared. There's so much fear. They're not confident to come, you know, up front and complain or report. So we had to do that, use an alternative way of how can we support them now that they cannot go back to school. But good news, now that has changed. With the new presidency, we have a re-entry policy. So now pregnant, dropped out of school girls are allowed to go back to school. Yeah.
Maybe other reactions from your side on this enabling environment? Do you think that this is really improving for the types of combined action that Lydia was mentioning? And
100%. So one of the projects that we followed in Cairo was a education class in a classroom, again, no electricity, one whiteboard, and it started with very basic, the alphabet. And you're looking at girls between, let's say, 12 and 17, most of whom will have left school at around 10 or 11 years old, probably because of sexual harassment. So Cairo, unfortunately, 99% of women say that they have been sexually harassed by the time they were 12 years old. And we looked at everything with them, from the alphabet to basic math, but to their rights. So the rights that you have and then the rights that you then lose often when you get married. And again, getting married is not a long desired, wanted necessarily experience. It's often you are 13, 14, and you can bring in a handsome dowry for your family. So tying together the education impact, empowering them, also actually on the digital point, because what was so interesting is everyone had a mobile phone, but they didn't know how to use it. But they just saw that everyone in the world has a mobile phone, so they have to have a mobile phone. They couldn't read or write, but they would have a mobile phone. And it was chiefly for taking pictures or sending emojis to each other. So one of the projects, I think it was Mothers at Risk, did this very well, was to invest in mobile phones that had training on them just to teach basic literacy. So again, you're looking at it so multi-strand, you can't pick apart one avenue because they are so interwoven. And it starts so young. And if you're not encouraging and enabling this culture from a young age, a lot of them really felt that they had no hope and then no opportunity.
I think on a granular level, from We Cyclers' perspective, a lot of the people that we engage with are women. About 80% of the subscribers are women, because usually, of course, women in many of these communities are the ones that are responsible for the household. And when they see that there's an opportunity for them to make money, on the side, they'll do that. So we have people, for instance, single mothers that struggle to, feed their families. And when We Cyclers comes into their communities, they find a way, to make money. And they actually make more money from collecting trash and giving to We Cyclers than they would have made before. And from that, they're able to, for instance, send their children to school, pay for their rent, buy land. So we have a woman, her name is Iya Daniel. So Iya in Yoruba language means mother. So Daniel's mother. So before We Cyclers came in, she was making not so much money, but afterward, she had made enough money where now, as a woman, she was saying that she actually now has a right to speak. Because before then, she was just living life and trying to struggle. But because she was making enough money to even help her family and help other members of her family, they had to listen to her now. So she was empowered, from doing that. And now she's doing very well. So I think, one of the ways is providing women with economic empowerment, giving them a voice, And like you said, Lydia, I think that's very important. I want to really amplify what you said around giving women, understanding that it's not only about giving women money, it's also psychological support. So you have women that have businesses where they're even making more money than their husbands. And because the husband is jealous, no offense to the men, no offense, not all men are like that. So you find that the woman has to shut the business down or reduce her business because her husband is threatened, and he will go to, some of them go to so many, for instance, they'll go and report her to her family and tell her that now she's rude in the house, she's not listening anymore, and she has to let the business go. So how many women how many businesses have we lost from that? I think coming up with methods for providing women with counseling, even on a higher level, even women that seem to be doing very well, providing a safe space for women to talk and share some of these things and listen to other people, and seeing that, look, you're not the only one that is struggling with this. I think once we can do that and make it less of a bad thing, less of a stigma, I think we're going to see more big businesses come out.
Interesting, very interesting. Maybe for Bart, the question, this mentality shift that is needed, the complexity that was described by the three ladies here in the panel, how do you deal with this in an organization like Enable? Do you fully take account of these realities?
Yeah, I think gender is maybe one of our main team at Enable. So we work at all levels. We have women incubators, accelerated business incubators, accelerators. We have a project called She Decides that's really working on reproductive health. And of course, we work a lot on at government level, from government to government. And I think my experience is that gender is not a taboo anymore. I started 20 years in development in Senegal and Gambia. And if you would talk about gender, it would be, this is imposed from the West. This is now, you have, if you now look in Rwanda, Kagame, I'm not agreeing with everything he does, but on that way, he said there's 51% of the population are women, so my government should be reflected. So there's a lot we can learn in Europe about that. Tanzania is actually also quite good, especially at the local government level. You have women party, very strong women in government, and now I think with Mama Samia it has maybe even gotten better. That doesn't mean that there's no setbacks. I remember also that, for example, to enter government buildings, there were not so long ago, women in Tanzania could not enter with jeans or with trousers on. So my wife's business partner was actually hit with a stick because she was wearing a jean. So there's still some things happening, but working in very traditional communities. I worked with Maasai communities with an organization called Pastoralist Women Council on FGM. And their traditional leaders were actually speaking up against the practice. So there's really, I think there's a lot of good things going on. Now, of course, as a Western organization, I will not hide, especially in West Africa, Enable is still welcome. We are not French, so this helps. But yeah, working in countries like Niger, Burkina Faso, it's not going directly in the, so you have, of course, very much a Western, anti-Western sentiment, which also might have a backlash on other, which I would call universal values. So it could also be that they would also suddenly things like gender or democracy, human rights would also be seen as, and that's a bit what some countries are promoting in Africa. So there's that danger, and it's really moving up on the continent. So let's hope this tendency. But in general, I think it's going in the right direction.
All right, thank you very much, all four. I think we will now go into questions and answers, but not only questions and answers, you can also make your own observations from your own experience. So if you want to take the floor, just make yourself known. And we also have people online, and people online, I think Kathleen can coordinate that. Yeah, people online can write in the Q&A their questions, and we will make sure that those questions will be answered. If you have specific questions to one of the specific panelists, also say this at the moment that you are asking your question. Who would like to take the floor? Who would like to? Yes, please.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. My name is Melanie Hawken. I'm the founder and CEO of Lionesses of Africa. We are a 1.8 million strong woman entrepreneur network. Bilicus has been part of our network for as long as we have been around. And kudos to you. I have to say, you are still an amazing example of what can happen and what can be achieved when women entrepreneurs are given the right kind of support. And that support is not a handout. And I've got to amplify what you said, Bilicus, because you're absolutely right. Women entrepreneurs in Africa don't want a handout. They want an equal opportunity to be able to access markets, access funding when they need it for growth, not for a handout, and to be able to have the right kind of capacity development to be able to grow businesses that create jobs. And from the research work that we've done, we know if you invest in women entrepreneurs, you're investing in job creation, you're investing in growth businesses that give back to community. The value chain is so much longer. And as you quite rightly said, it's a commercial decision. This should make really good business sense to everybody. So we really should, on behalf of, I will say it now, all the women entrepreneurs in our network, we just want access to markets. Let us actually crack some of those big corporate supply chains. Everyone talks at a big business level about opening up a percentage of their opportunities for women entrepreneurs. Let's actually make it a much wider percentage. Let's make it more companies and big government departments. Let's open up the opportunities for women with really good businesses, with really good products and services to get an equal shot, and actually then back it up with the growth funding they need to be able to then create jobs and really create the economic potential they're capable of. So it's not a handout. It's actually just really good business sense. So let's start seeing this differently. Women entrepreneurs make really good business sense for Africa and the rest of the world.
Very clear. Big consensus around with the panelists. Other observations, questions? Yes, please.
Thanks so much for the panel. My name is Rani Deshpande, and I work with an organization called CGAP, along with my colleague Antonique here. We are a financial inclusion think and do tank housed within the World Bank. And one thing, a common theme I picked up across your comments, Bilikis, and yours, Lydia, was this interplay between economic power on one hand and cultural practices, values, what we might call social norms on the other. And you both spoke to the interplay between those. And so I was wondering if we could maybe try and generalize that up a little bit and ask, in your experience, where have you seen that economic power can really shift those social norms? And where do social norms overpower even having financial resources and prevent women and girls from actually exercising power over those financial resources? Are there any patterns that you've seen that might lead us to solutions that take both of that interplay into account?
Think about this, and yes, there's a question from
Kathleen from ECDPM, and I have a small question actually for Lydia. When you talk about people, women having more economic power and actually having a backlash when they go home, or Bilikis, you said the same thing, they're told to stop. When you do your empowerment, or I don't think you called it capacity development or skills development meetings, but do you actually include also men in those trainings? Because empowering women on their own, and they go home and they have to face it, I think, in what way do you include men in those awareness building events?
Yes.
I had a question or a comment to that. I don't think it's necessarily the job of women to educate men.
We take one more question and then we ask the panel to give a first reaction. Yes, please.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Sami. I work with the Botswana Embassy here. I think very interesting discussions. And one thing that I wanted to is pivot on the last two commenters. And the solution, I think, to promoting female entrepreneurship in Africa is the word empowerment. And that empowerment needs now to trickle down into many facets that impact and impede on women entrepreneurs. And the cultural dynamic is something that I have highlighted. And I think it needs to be brought to the fore because it is one of the foundations of what is inhibiting female participation in entrepreneurship. There are cultural norms, there are cultural practices that directly affect households and the dynamics. And I think COVID-19 was a clear reality on what the realities of women are, is that there's a stark difference in terms of the rights that we have, and that difference has an impact. So I think for us to be able to address empowering of women and getting access to opportunities is to face that reality and respond to it socially, but also resourcing women at different levels. Because it is true that most women are subsistence. They're trying to take care of their families. At the same time, they're scaling up with, like, if you have a good business idea, how do we develop it and how do we resource it adequately so it's sustainable? Those are my few comments. Thank you.
Thank you. We will invite the panel to react, and let's start with Lydia. This interplay between economic empowerment and social norms. How is this, from your perspective, working? We had a question, of course, also addressed to you, but also to the others. How are you including men in the type of work that her initiative is undertaking? And then there was this element of the cultural norms. So they are linked, these types of questions. Please, Lydia.
Thank you. I'm going to try my best, and then I know my other panelists are going to support. So it's really a tricky part, economic power and social norms. It's really, really tricky. And at some point, you might think one addresses the other, but sometimes it amplifies. It makes it worse. So I think what economic power does is actually reduce the vulnerability. You know, like in the beginning, this woman didn't have any financial power, so she had to take whatever was offered and she had to tolerate. But now when economic empowerment comes in, there's a choice, you know, there's a choice, because maybe she's able to cover all these other parts of her life. So it gives her more confidence to actually maybe be a little bit more vocal and confident to pursue what she believes is right. So what it gives is actually a choice and reduce the vulnerability of just making a decision because you're in need. So that's how I see it. But when it comes to social norms, I think the most important part is to actually not just give them economic empowerment, but to ensure they're part of the decision making. And that can be a little bit political, but I see in my family, it works, you know, because most of the time, even for weddings in Africa, funerals, you'll find men sitting and planning, but these men are the ones with money. So these days, I'm really included in the family, like in meetings. What do you think? You know, because there's something you can contribute. So I feel like being part of the decision-making process, you know, it starts slowly, of course, at home, you know, deciding what is it you guys are going to eat, or what are you going to do together, because there's that part of contribution. Then it's easy for you to be included. Even if they don't include you, you can ask. I usually tell girls, you don't have to wait until someone gives you something. If you feel you're worth it, ask for it. So that could also be a way that that works for women. But also comes to her question, I love what she answered. In a way, it's good to include men, but when they are included, sometimes they bring what they already have and make it more complicated for the movement and for the work of women. You know, they can make it worse, because unless you're including a man that is aware, understands, and believes in the rights of women. But if you bring them, because I remember we had a really bad a backlash last year. We were working with small vendors in the market somewhere in Buguruni, Dar es Salaam, and then we brought the head of that market. All the things he was saying, we regretted, because we did not do the vetting well. He didn't believe in this. So we were talking about the challenges. Then he talks about, but these women, sometimes when they're given this power, they don't respect their men. I'm like, oh my, what have we done? You see? So it works if you include the right man in the space. But if it's not the right man, it can complicate and, you know, actually affect the whole entire atmosphere. So, and usually...
Did you find the right man in her initiative?
We do. Like, that's one, the first question. What do you think about women and girls' rights? You know, how are you advocating for that? Because you can start here, but you need to believe at least on that. So, so it's good to include them, but there's that, you know, part of it. But also, I feel like the reason why we are empowering women and girls is because they have been left behind, you know. And if that's the case, then we need to find other platforms for men. That's how I believe so. When people ask me, why are you doing it for girls? I feel like in my community, girls are in need. But if you're a man and you feel men need something, I think you can do that. And what's good is that I think men normally are not told to do things. When they see things, they do it. So I feel if the time really arrives and they feel they need to do something, I think they can do it. Because I feel now if we are trying to bring the men agenda in the women agenda, and if you've been in the space, patriarchal, I usually say, has very small particles. You'll find it everywhere. And if you're not careful, it will just come in, like what I've explained in that meeting that we had with our work. So I don't think we need to dilute it. But what has been the best practice is that if we're going to a community, we want to work with a girl, we speak with the parents, we explain to them we speak with the husband, we speak with local leaders, religious leaders, just to tell them to understand what we are doing and how they can support. That is something very important, because at the end of the day, if they tell them maybe you cannot go out, they will not come to your training. So it's very important to engage them, but it also depends, how are you engaging them? You are engaging them at that level where if they understand, they can support. But if you're engaging them directly in the space, it's going to be, you know, a back and forth. I don't know, but that's, I think, is what I've experienced.
Yes, of course, Bilikis. We have similar experiences.
So I think I would say, I want to quote Millie Odhiambo from Kenya. There's this meme that's going around of her saying that, look, be a bad woman. You know, she was talking to the Speaker of the House and he was telling her to be an example to the new women. And she said, look, being a good woman doesn't help you. Be a bad woman. So I think we need to, in society, we need to encourage our women to be bad, you know, because a lot of us, we are socialized into believing that the norm is for you to have a beautiful family, for your husband to love everything, and for you to be perfect. But it's okay not to be perfect. And when you look at history of women, a lot of women have been bad women. Look at Funmilayo Kuti. She was one of the women that helped Nigerian women have power. And she was someone, she actually overthrew a king. And this was a woman that stood up, and I'm sure during that time, they didn't like her. So we have to, I think, encourage women to be comfortable, because I think we are as women, we are encouraged to be pleasers. We are happy. We only feel successful if everybody is happy with us. But it's okay for people not to like you. It's okay for people to think that you are bad. It's okay for people to think that, look, I remember there was a man that I went to an event and he said, shut up, that I have somebody like you at home. And I said, she doesn't have 2 master's degrees, so she's not like me, so it's okay.
Lydia, don't become too bad, and don't overthrow our king, eh? Please, Georgia.
Just add one comment there. This is not unique to Africa at all. Even yesterday, I got told that I am a terrorist and that what the 9 does is funding terrorism. So if anyone believes that this is absolutely, I get this on the regular, a feminazi, that we are bringing down society. It happens all the time. There are so many angry voices. And I defy any of you in this room right now to tell me who is a male ally that you know and is outspoken. I ask, can you name one? Okay, I'm going to give you 3 to follow on LinkedIn. Lee Chambers, Robert Baker, Rick Zednick. Start following them. Okay, I know it's very UK centric, but start there and they will lead you into other paths, because you need to hear male voices supporting male allyship, because we cannot do all the heavy lifting. We have more than enough problems to deal with.
Our director recently got a He for She award, so I think he was maybe also part of it. No, I just want to say something about including man or nothing, so or not. We have already this discussion with government in the categories of youth, for example. So because men know that they are mostly or not so much included in projects, so the only place they can be part of it is under the youth, because we focus on women and youth. So we always have this discussion, youth is until which age? So we want the base to limit it to 25, because after 25, so in Africa it's already going to 35. That's most, I think in Tanzania it's even official, but then you have government officials who want to make it till 40, so that men from 40-year-olds can also join the program. So yeah, we don't go in that direction.
Okay, let's go for another round of questions. I see someone who is raising the hand. Please make yourself known and we give you a microphone. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Thank you for all the insights and a very engaging discussion. It's a pleasure to follow you. My name is Stefan Daiber. I'm working for the German Development Corporation here within Brussels representation. I have been involved in entrepreneurial ecosystem development and entrepreneurship support for the last several years. And there are a lot of learnings we have done on the way. And sometimes I have the impression entrepreneurs and women entrepreneurs are overestimating the power of development corporations. As we are dealing with taxpayers' money, we are not able to invest that into high-risk companies. This money needs to come from private investors. In best case, we are able to reduce the costs of investment and in that way reduce interest rates. And then we have a positive outcome for both investors and the investees. One segment of economy I would like to outline here, and this is very much in line with what is here phrased as culture, was identified by Diego Opfal of the World Bank as one economic opportunity for women economic empowerment, and this is the care economy. As a lot of care work is done by women without getting paid, and this care work holds them back from participating in a formal labor market. This needs to be reduced. Unpaid care work needs to be reduced and formalized. And here we have huge potential for economic growth for women economic empowerment. Thank you.
Consensus here around the table, I see, but very good observation. Who would like to ask more questions? I'm looking around. There should be a few more, maybe also online, Kathleen, no? No, I see Gerald Abila. Sorry, I didn't say.
No, it's okay.
You're first, yeah.
Hi, everyone. I'm Sylvia. I work for DSW, and my question is for Lydia. So you mentioned a little bit about how SRHR, sexual reproductive health and rights, and a woman's ability to, become an entrepreneur are really interconnected. So I just wanted to know a little bit more about the programs that you run to, do you have like educational programs in which you empower the young women and the young people? And yeah, what does that look like?
Hugh, Gerald, yes.
I think my mom was one of the baddest us women around. She was the first in our village to go to school like you. She has 2 masters. And so growing up.
Maybe just present yourself for those who do not yet know yourself.
I'm Gerald Abila. I'm a lawyer from Uganda. I started Barefoot Law, which is a previous winner for the African Development Prize. And yeah, my mom was a teacher. Used to be a teacher, but she has pivoted to something else. And I remember growing up, the first words I learned to read were educate a woman, educate a nation. And that was a big poster in the sitting room. And so I grew up knowing you educate a woman, you educate a nation. And it's something obvious that everyone should sort of treat obviously. But as I grew old, I realized it goes beyond gender. Sometimes, and I deal with so many women and men at community level, like the most basic, poorest parts of the country, and you get to realize women emancipation is a mentality. And sometimes the greatest opponents who benefit from the system are themselves women. And yet you'll find sometimes the greatest allies are men. And I'll give you an example. We set up virtual legal aid centers at community level. The one is 3 years old now. And every Thursday was market day. 90% of those that sell items in the market are women. And the market is about half a kilometer away from the main road, and it's dark. So Fridays, there's huge cases against women, violence, beating them up because they're walking with money in darkness, reported at the police station, the health center. Friday is dedicated to women, and the cases that were reported to our boxes were mostly against violence against women on Fridays. And one of the ideas from the town council, the local municipality, was these cases happen in darkness. So to stop them, you need to set up light. And the allies that helped us set up that light were the traditional customary leaders who are men in that community. So what we did was we mobilized resources and lit up the whole place. set up what we are calling a justice microgrid, light up the road, the marketplace, the boxes, the town councils, the police stations. They couldn't go to the police because it's dark. And yet the next day you can't report because there is no evidence. So just lighting this up. So I guess my perspective is different from this. It's I look at it more beyond our biological differences, and I look at it more like a mindset. So the question for me, from my perspective, is how do we amplify this mindset that negates putting down of women because of their gender, you know? So I guess it starts with us. For men, the alliance, I think, from us is in how we educate our kids and how we raise them. I think every home should have that big poster, educate a woman, educate a nation. And I think just because I'm a man does not mean I don't care about women issues. And just because you're a woman does not mean you will advocate for women emancipation. So I think it's just a mentality that needs to be amplified. That's an experience I have from my work. But also something else, one last thing, in terms of development aid, I absolutely agree with what you said, Lydia. It's so old school and non-progressive, and it leaves, unfortunately, women are the most affected. Men, like you said, they see it, they go, whether it works or it, like I will pivot. Today I'm a lawyer, tomorrow I'm an engineer, tomorrow I'm what? Where the money is where I'll go. And one beautiful thing I've seen in the past 5 years was with Annabelle. And I think the KBF was involved. There was a program called We Habit. I don't know if you remember We Habit. And I find Belgium Technical Cooperation, or at least the Belgian way of looking, especially through We Habit, very progressive. While others, with all due respect, the German side of things is a bit too traditional. So I think there's something development cooperation can learn from We Habit, and how We Habit is like, maybe you can speak a bit more about it, but we worked with them. It's like an incubation in digital entrepreneurship, but also development cooperation, less restricted. So I think it's just something you can explore from a development perspective, especially targeted towards women as a thematic area.
Thank you, Gerald. Are there any further questions? Yes, please, Anna.
Thank you. It's not a question, it's just to add on.
For those who do not yet know you.
Okay,
yes.
My name is Anna Kulaya, the chairperson of Her Initiatives. So yeah, the discussion is very interesting. I agree with you that women, maybe sometimes they are more vulnerable because of themselves, but we should remember the patriarch system, which is embedded in women. So in most times, sometimes people feel like women themselves, they are the agents of this patriarch system. So we have real work to do to make sure that even women themselves, they start breaking this kind of patriarch system because it is embedded. They are the ones in the socializations. Women are raising children, but the way women they're raising their boys and their girls is totally different, because they are raising their boys to be leaders. They are raising their girls to be, receivers, to be vulnerable, to be receptive. So but again, it's a patriarch system that we really need to work on it. Another thing which is very important, especially for police people here, the issue of land. Especially for Africa, land is everything. Land is voice. Land is choice. Land is decision-making. Land is everything. When you're talking about access to resources and opportunities for Africa, we're talking about land. So we should also think on how we are going to, change our policies in land so that women can access the resources, which is land, because most of the women, they don't access land. And that's where even the issues of power imbalances begins, because most of the women, they are not in the decision leadership, because even at home, because if you look at the ecological model, from the family level to the community, to the society, people, they're expecting men to be leaders. Why? Because men are the ones who have access. The same applies even to economic empowerment programs. we have one of the program in one of the regions in Tanzania, whereby women, they use, to plant these legumes. It was for, family consumptions. And now it's becoming a business, a very good business. And now the men, they want it to become their own product. These crops, the groundnuts, the beans, were for women, for own consumption, for family consumption. But when it comes now, it is an economic issue. Now it changed from becoming the women to men. So you see those kind of perception. But why? Because land, the ownership of land is, most of them, for men. Women, they have the right to use, only to use rights, to use land, but they don't have like ownership of land. So the policies, land and other economic policies which really favor women is also ideal, especially for the international to look on it. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. I think we are going for the very last questions because we still need to ask the panel to reply to some of your questions. Yes, please.
Yeah, thank you everyone for this insightful discussion. I'm Esma. I'm construction engineer by background, and I specialize in digitalization and AI. I have met recently Georgia. Just to, I totally agree what have been said. Just to add on what you said about the women to be like bad, I think we have this good girl syndrome, which often happens even here in Europe. Like I have quite like example even here, like coming up in Brussels. So I had 2 interns, construction engineer interested by digitalization in construction. So the girl, I was like, I received her CV. I was like, do you know about digitalization of construction? She was like, yeah. I don't know much. I don't think I do have experience. I just did one little project. I was like, okay, for me, it was more like about experience, like to help, to inspire. So I did accept her internship. So I was like, okay, you will start at this date. And then on the other hand, I got contacted by a guy who wants the same internship. So I was like, what's your experience? Do you know more about BIM, etc.? Yeah, I know it. I had the course on it. I had a lot of projects, etc. And actually, when I compared both of them, it was the same projects, the same courses. And the girl, so I was waiting for her on the deadline that she was supposed to start. And I was like, okay, now it's late. So I called her. I was like, yeah, but I think that you didn't want me because I have just little experience. I was like, but you are still an intern. You are still in your 3rd year bachelor, so it's kind of normal. And I did realize how it's crazy. Like sometimes we don't have enough confidence in ourselves, and guys usually by cultural environment. So he was like, yeah, I did that, and that, like, really he convinced me. So for me, I was like, oh, the high hopes, I was expecting so much, and for the girl, like, I expected so little the way she explained, but at the end it was like the same result. So it's just crazy. I think we have also this imposter syndrome that I often call it like that. I mean, it's called like that. So I was also part of Initiative Women NGOs here in Brussels. And we all started our projects, but at the end, like, no one wanted to create their own NGOs. And what was the problem? Because the fact that we separated for like 2 months because of the vacation. So we were like, yeah, but my project is not good, etc. So I think when we want to be entrepreneurs and when we want to have like our project, we have the skills, but often what it lacks, it's this good girl syndrome, the imposter syndrome. So my question, do you like, I think we can't, because I'm also entrepreneurs, I have little SME, so we can't discuss the entrepreneurship, the emancipation for women without tackling those issues, like to involve the soft skills, kind of, to give confidence to women. So do you incorporate this like in your programs? And my second question, I will try to be quick. So the role of digitalization, I think today the digitalization has a huge importance, kind of, because we can go beyond geographical limits when we are at conflicts, etc., but also the language with just the phone, as you mentioned. I see, like, I'm involved for an with the organization NGO Women in Senegal. So they don't have internet, they don't have infrastructure, but they do have phone. The percentage of the usage of phone is 120% for everyone. So I think this could be good tool to access to trainings, to learn, to build e-commerce, to do whatever. So do you also like does like digitalization play a huge role in your different programs? Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's very good that many of you have reacted also from the floor, because that enriches the discussion. It's not just putting questions, it's also making your own points and observations. I like that, but we only have 5 minutes left. And what I would like to do is to ask each of the panelists to not use more than 2 minutes to first give an answer to the questions that were put, particularly by the last person. There's one person who had specific questions for her initiative, and I will give you, as the last panelist, the time to quickly react to the way you're working. Otherwise, you can also do this after the meeting. But very important also to give your takeaways from this panel discussion. Is there anything that you have picked up which you didn't know yet? Have you been even more confirmed in your views that you had already? Give a few of your takeaways, 2-3 takeaways from this discussion, while also responding to the questions that were put, including on digitalization, including on the change of mindset with women and men. So please, I would start with you, Georgia.
So, I can speak very fast. So imposter syndrome, yes, 100%. I think in every event that we do at the 9, this comes up in one way or another, whether we're calling it imposter syndrome or the good girl syndrome or tall poppy syndrome. There are so many syndromes that we all apparently suffer from. I just don't think we just don't feel supported because, spoiler alert, we are existing in a world that was not built for us. So of course we don't feel supported. And that's why we're changing it one initiative at a time or one club at a time to create environments where we not only can live, but thrive and hopefully then inspire others. I think my big takeaway from today is, one, the universality, that these experiences do extend beyond geographic borders. And that's very important, especially for us here based in Brussels, not to think of ourselves as being better or more advanced. Actually, I don't think we are. I think we can also react to our humility and accept that there are many things that we can learn from, not only in Africa, but I would say a lot of the MENA region. And I'm very glad to hear how much Annabelle is putting into the female focus. And I know how it is to receive criticism, but I would say just keep fighting the good fight. And funnily enough, I also had this question about youth, and we've accepted that youth also in Belgium is 35. So you can make of that what you want.
Okay, wow.
I think on a lighter note, one of the learnings I've learned today is that I'm not a youth anymore. Technically, depends on whatever.
We live in the middle on which definition we are talking about.
Depends on what definition. But I would say that just listening to you, Georgia, and you, Lydia, seeing how in different regions, what women are going through. Like when you said women felt like they were sexually abused, that was, it was wild to me because I haven't really seen that here in Nigeria. But I would say that small is mighty, small is powerful. We don't really need to, I think as, I'm going to put myself in your shoes, philanthropic shoes. You don't necessarily have to have big solutions. You don't necessarily have to back big organizations. And I think that was one of the reasons that her initiative came out on top, because even as a small organization, they're making such huge impact. So definitely, I think looking at when you see interesting solutions, it doesn't necessarily have to be a big one. You can start small. And then I would also say that leverage is powerful. It doesn't have to be money. Like from GIZ, you mentioned about how we overestimate the power of philanthropy. But it doesn't necessarily have to be money. You can actually create access to markets, like you said, Melanie. You can create platforms, you can support platforms, you can support those kinds of things that would enable organizations to tap into those things. So let's think more about leverage, because that could also help us to amplify and maximize and create catalytic change. So I'll just stop there.
Great observations as well. Please, Bart.
Thank you very much for inviting me to this panel. It was very inspirational also to hear all the different stories. What I've learned is it's about opportunity. It's not about giving away or philanthropy. I think the world's the balance of power is shifting. I think we have the largest young population in history at this moment, and most of them are in Africa. By 2050, there will be 760 million people added to the workforce. The second in line, and that will all be in Africa. The second in line is India, which is 300 million. So you see the gap. Europe will lose people. We will have an aging population. China also. Asia is going down. So Africa is the future. So if we say, okay, Ukraine, and it's all very important, but if we invest now in the future of youth and all these opportunities, I think this is not a choice. It's something we have to do, and it will enrich us. And maybe last thing, youth. The youth of today is a different thing than youth of we were innocent, ignorant, but now with AI, with all the technology, the access to information is so strong. And the ideas that are coming in full force, and I think it's amazing. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Bart. We have Lydia, who will have who had the first word and also the last word. So please, quick reaction. Do not go too much into the detail of the question that was put to you, but a few hints would be very helpful. The way you are partnering with various organizations, types of initiatives, but we can continue that discussion after the panel. And please also your takeaways. Is there anything that you take with you to Tanzania from this panel?
Yeah, I'm gonna try. No, I'm gonna be brief. Yeah. So first of all, I've learned so much, and I think there's so much similarities in not just in Africa but in the world. She was talking about something. I think one of my friend does HR resourcing in Tanzania, and one of the hub points has been when a boy and a girl, they have the same skills, but a boy will say, "I can do it," and a girl with the skills will say, like, "No." So I can see that's those kind of similarities. But for me, I think one of the things that I take here is around the importance of taking action in everything that we hear or we see in our own communities, being agent of change in our own communities. I think that's one thing that I'm going with. Regarding our programs, like he said, maybe we can speak later, but we can also visit highinitiative.or.tz. We help young women set up new businesses. So we skill them, we give them funding to set up new businesses. The one with businesses, we help them scale, looking for resourcing for them, but also teaching them how they can digitize their business. Now more focus is around how do they tap into the potential of the digital economy. And we have localized our own tech solution, which answers also your question. Like, we are major in technology and digitization, and we use that to help women launch businesses, expand their market, expand their sales, and it's been working. So I agree with you. Digital and technology is very important. And for Tanzania, we have more men online than the women. So it's not about just businesses, it's also about digital inclusion, teaching them basic skills to know how to navigate and finding these opportunities. But also, it's also about how do they increase their competence with the opportunities that come with the digital economy. There's so many job opportunities, business opportunities that needs them to tap into. So yeah, I think those would be my. Yeah, and our digital platform and technology, thank you, Catherine, is in Swahili, local language. So sometimes maybe we cannot have one solution for all. So we try to customize our solution for the people. And I think that's also something to think about, because technology is not robot. Technology complements what already exists. So you need to think about what's missing and what technology can do to that. Whatever we're doing right now with our platform, Panda Digital, it's not anything new. I think it exists in other countries, but the uniqueness of it is because in Swahili, it is in Swahili. The services are for free. It means we look for money, the girls access it, and it is hybrid. by hybrid, I mean you can access in the urban and in the rural. If you're in the urban, you can use a smartphone and internet and get the services. If you're in the rural, you can use your feature phone without internet and still get artificial intelligence Panda SMS. So it's all about how do you see technology and how can it complement what already exists.
Thank you very much, Lydia, and thank you very much the whole panel, the 4 people here in this panel. I felt extremely privileged to be surrounded by 3 powerful ladies and also a very sympathetic women-friendly man. I learned a lot. It was really a very interesting panel as well through the audience. I think many of you in the audience also enriched the discussions, and this also helped to have some takeaways that we will take with us in our next stages of discussion on entrepreneurship, on female entrepreneurship, and the way this can also be backed up and supported by allies and partners worldwide. I would like to close this session here, and please give a good round of applause to our panel.